Hello and welcome to Convergence of the Future, a podcast by AI. I'm Melvin Menchau. Convergence of the Future is going to be dedicated to technology, finance, healthcare, a number of sectors that are sometimes regulated, sometimes not. We like media, we like the world in general. But one thing is important to us is how is all those sectors being disrupted? Our lives are being disrupted by those technologies. And it's key for us to invite founders, investors, capital allocators, members of the civil society to discuss those topics. So, welcome to Convergence of the Future by AI.
And you have this initial, like, people are excited about it. And then there's that trough of disillusionment, right? And I think the trough of disillusionment is actually where the opportunity lies. That is where people start developing the ideas that then use that hype. You know, what was hype is now starting to become reality. And that's where the business really starts to grow. And I really feel like that's where we are right now. We had the initial hype. People got kind of annoyed by like, oh, it doesn't do what I thought it would. And now people are building. You know, and I think that over the next year, over the next couple of years, we're going to really see some amazing technologies launch that are just going to keep taking it forward and keep taking it forward. And I think, you know, the ChatGPTs and the Claudes of the world, they're building these models that are going to create so much more fertile ground to build new things. And, you know, that's what we want to be a part of. And so when I think about the implementations we did with large enterprises with AI technologies, before, like in the news, you'd be reading about like, oh, when will AI be ready for the enterprise? And then you'd like log in for work on Monday and you'd be working with a large bank who's already using it. It's like, so people, these enterprises have been using AI technologies for a long time. And what we really found was that you have the same adoption challenge. If you roll out, say, 20,000 seats of ChatGPT and you don't think about how people are going to use it, you have the same problems that we had at Salesforce. You would roll out 20,000 seats of Salesforce and you don't think about how people use it and you run into the same adoption challenge. People think, oh, it's this amazing technology, they're just going to use it. And really, it doesn't get embedded into the workflow as well as it might. And so you end up with, okay, people are drafting emails or, you know, and you don't really get that deep embedded workflow. So the sales users who are working for the AI, they're doing all the busy work and the AI is doing the thought work. And it's backwards. It's, you know, what we really want to have is a solution where the AI does all the busy work and enables the people to do the thing that they're really good at. People are really good at building relationships. People are really good at building trust. People are really good at selling.
Hey, Tom. Welcome to Tom podcast. Thank you for being with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, Melvin. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for being there. So, Tom, we somehow had the chance to work in the same company. We both worked at Salesforce. You way longer than I did, and I left like a year ago after 4 years. Maybe before we get into the CRM and Salesforce, can you tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, where you live, and actually how you get from what kind of studies you did that get you into technology?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wide-ranging topic, but happy to talk about it, especially over the course of the next hour or whatever we have. I most recently, I'll start where I most recently have launched a startup called youex.ai. That is a AI-based lead to revenue system designed to close the gap between new lead and new opportunity, which is, and we'll talk through that step in a little bit, but how I got there. I started in technology, so always very, very interested in technology. I started as a programmer engineer way back in 2000. Worked for a government subcontractor for a few years, and then went on to a company that was building mobile apps in the enterprise space before really anybody else was. And we really got well known for building iPad apps for Salesforce customers back when Salesforce was kind of struggling with mobile launches. And so we got well known for that, got bought by Salesforce, became a part of Salesforce for the next 12 years after that. I was in services for a little while as part of that company's acquisition. It was Model Metrics was the company that got bought. And then I moved to customer success right about the time, if you're familiar with the Salesforce enterprise space, you're familiar with Lightning adoption. My team ran Lightning adoption in about 2016, 2017 through 2020 or so. And that was the really the adoption journey that we were taking every single Salesforce customer on for the customer success organization, and working very closely with product and marketing and a lot of other groups across Salesforce. And we went on to build a lot of other adoption programs for security uplift and moving Salesforce customers to the cloud with a Hyperforce, which was moved to AWS, and a lot of programs like that, where we really, really focused on how customers were using the product and making it as great as possible so that they were happy to use it and happy to grow along with us. And beyond that, I went to work at Altimetric, which was this really amazing company that was a partner, probably the first partner of OpenAI, first implementation partner of OpenAI. And we
Yes.
really worked with a lot of large enterprises on rolling out ChatGPT Enterprise and AI, OpenAI API programs and things like that. And then at the beginning of this year, I decided it was time for me to go on my own and launch a company, and that's where I am right now.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. What a ride. So in between small company being acquired by bigger company, this customer success role that I want to talk about, because it's a big part of the conversation about adoption, about metrics, about, like you said, what are the consumers actually use the platform, and then the big name of the time, OpenAI,
Mhm.
the companies that everybody dream or have nightmares about. We definitely want to touch upon all those things, but let's start with customer success.
Yeah.
What does being in that role and having, for what I understand now, your product hat on, building a product by yourself, and having worked on deployments at OpenAI, what does a customer success bring into the party? This closure with the customer. How does that drive what you're building today? And how did that drive who you are and how you approach software?
Yeah, excellent question. When I joined customer success, I was asked to focus on this challenge that Salesforce really had, which was this very big kind of existential challenge of being, we had a new interface launched called Lightning that almost no customers were really using, but the entire company was heavily focused on improving the Lightning experience. And really throughout that journey, what we found was that the thing that really, really worked, and this was a multi-year program, and we had board level targets that were reported to Mark Benioff, and it was really an intense program. And what we really found over the time was that when we really worked with our customers to understand how they used Salesforce, we were really able to better gear our programs, the product, make changes to the product, really geared it towards what they needed out of it. And where we really initially struggled was the initial launch of Lightning didn't do everything the old version did. So when people tried to just copy everything from one thing to the other, they tried to do a lift and shift. They
Mhm.
really got stuck in this notion of like, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that. And we didn't want to build the exact same thing again with the new UI. The whole idea was to say you could do things so much better with, this new experience. And so when we really started to work with our customers and really understand, how they were using Salesforce, and like one of the things we learned by looking at the data and also talking with customers is that sales users are sales users. And so many
Yeah.
times you look at the adoption throughout a month, and early in the month it's barely being used. And as the
Yes.
month goes on, you get to the end of the month, and like all of a sudden, everybody logs in and puts their opportunities in because that's how they get paid.
Yeah.
And customer service is different, but that was largely what we saw with sales users. And so that begs the question: are they really getting value out of the tool
Mm.
when they use it? Is the end user getting that value out of the tool when they use it? Or is it just a system of record? Is it just basically a very expensive spreadsheet? And what we
Yeah.
focused on was, okay, then, it's not necessarily about the use case. It's not necessarily about how does the business use it? What are the metrics? What are the targets and all of that? Those are important. But what was
Mhm.
really important in driving change was understanding, okay, how do we make this tool useful for this customer, for this user, for this person named whatever their name, like
Yeah.
actually go down to that personal level
Yeah.
and find out why are you not using it. And then, if you really find ways to give them value,
Mm-hmm.
then you get that much more usage, you get that much more attention to the product, you get that much more engagement with it. And then the business kind of drives itself. Management has more data, the executives are able to make better decisions. And you have this kind of flywheel of adoption that's created. And we really, that was the focus for many years on bringing, lightning adoption to our customers across all the way from the 2-person mom and pop shop to the 200,000 person enterprise company that was using it across their organization.
That's really interesting because adoption remains one of the hardest thing to measure. Like from the outside. From the outside, we will look at revenue number. We will look at margins, we will look at growth. But in the end, from the inside, for us to avoid churn, we do look at adoption. Does that correlate to what you lived elsewhere? Is it something that was also important for Altimetric, where you were leading AI strategy? Is it the same thing in SaaS as it is with an AI product? Does that notion changes depending on the product?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I would say is the human element remains the same regardless. And so when I think about the implementations we did with large enterprises with AI technologies,
Mm-hmm.
before, like in the news, you'd be reading about like, oh, when will AI be ready for the enterprise? And then you'd like log in for work on Monday and you'd be working with a large bank who's already using it. It's like, so these enterprises have been using AI technologies for a long time. And what we really found was that you have the same adoption challenge. If you roll out, say, 20,000 seats of ChatGPT, and you don't think about how people are going to use it, you have the same problems that we had at Salesforce. You would roll out 20,000 seats of Salesforce and you don't think about how people use it, and you run into the same adoption challenge. People think, oh, it's this amazing technology, they're just going to use
Yeah,
it. And really, it doesn't get embedded into the workflow as well as it might. And so you end up with, okay, people are drafting emails or, and you don't really get that deep embedded workflow.
yeah.
So the ones where we really had, and there's one in particular, I can't name the name, but we had this really great long running project where we did an initial rollout of ChatGPT. It was a couple of different like custom GPT chatbots.
Mhm.
And the initial response was like, okay, cool, but it didn't really get that much more done than people were getting done otherwise. And so what we focused on was finding one person in the company who
Okay.
we could really help. And so we
Mhm.
asked the CIO who we were working with, like, who's the best performer? Who is the person everybody goes to? And we found this one guy, and and he was the person that when he was out on vacation, the company kind of ground to a halt. He was a guy who, like, if somebody had a question, they went to this guy. He was this, like, just he'd been there forever. He knew all the answers. He knew where to find things. He knew that just every company kind of has this. It's
Yeah,
not intentional. The company didn't plan for it. This person
yeah,
didn't plan for it. They've just become this knowledge base.
yeah.
And so we built the initial product that we rolled out was actually called This Person's Name Bot. And,
Okay.
it was this, like, we really just tried to say, like, okay, what does this person spend most of their time answering questions for other people that maybe if they could get that answer themselves, they wouldn't, this person could move on and do more innovative things. They could,
Yeah,
this is not somebody anybody wanted to replace. This is somebody
yeah.
we wanted to empower, help them do more, and that's when we really had this, like, inflection point and this real breakthrough for adoption, which was it created a focal point of saying, we have one, it wasn't a use case. It was like, what does this person do? How do we make them better? And then he was like so excited about it, he would tell his friends, and his friends would tell their friends. And we would run like we would run a web, like a webinar or something for, end users. And you'd invite 20 people for,
Yeah,
okay, we build a small group, we're trying to get an idea going, and 100 people would show up. And you'd be like, oh, wow, like, this is amazing. And there was so much excitement based around just what we were building with them. And I think that's the real thing to really keep in mind is that you're not building it for them. You didn't build it and roll it out. Companies that I've worked with who think about, like, okay, we're going to do a 10-month project and turn it on and everyone will love it, it never works. When they really say, okay, I'm going to bring in a couple people and really work closely with them and solve their problems escalate to other people's problems. And those it just, it creates this network effect that really helps grow adoption organically throughout the project. And then you launch it and you're like, oh, amazing. We're like doing great. And so people don't have that like, oh, how do we think about change management now problem? They have
Yeah.
this like, oh, we've been doing it all along. And so you have these really great successes. And so I would say that's the single thread,
Yeah.
that we found that at Salesforce when we worked closely with a customer who was struggling, and this was, a customer success type motion. And we found this when I was working with, customers with OpenAI and Altimetric was if we really could get them to think and focus on, what are people doing? How do we help those individuals to do that much better? You really create this like network effect of like, oh, everybody's excited about it and everybody's getting that much more value out of it.
Excellent, excellent. So that gets us to what you're doing now. Maybe let's start with that. What is through those lessons learned and through those this knowledge that drove the creation of UX AI, and probably start with what is UX AI, what does it do, what problem does it solve, and now you are able to bring that wealth of experience into that new product.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So UX/AI, it's a play on user experience. But it's youex, so it's UX. It's the idea is that your experience is the most important thing. We want you to have this amazing, like my dream is people log in, use the app, love it, use it every day, send me an email about how much they love it. Like that's the dream, right? And that's the thing that we really want to realize is that the intelligence layer is so powerful now, but it's not enough. It's the
Yeah.
experience layer that really really makes a difference. And so the central theory that I have kind of going into this product is that we've seen in the market this explosion of growth of technology, of just especially when you look at like if you look at some of the numbers coming out of Anthropic in particular, they talk a lot about the engineering use cases using Claude Code and Codex and GitHub Copilot and like all of these like really really powerful tools. It's something like 50% of engineering use cases are being solved by these tools. The engineers are able to use them. And I
Yeah.
really think it's because we've really, the industry has built tools that have worked really well for that particular use case. It's a problem, that's most familiar with the engineers who are building the tools and the apps and I think what we haven't yet really realized is doing the same thing for other functions. And if you look at Anthropic's own data, sales, CRM use cases, it's something like 4.9%. 5%, something like that, of like use cases that are really deeply embedded in AI today. So
Yeah.
that's the opportunity space. Like, how do we build something that's really works great for sales users? And right now, when you look at the industry, you have sales users that are spanning 10 different point solutions. They're logging into, one solution to download their leads, and they've got a spreadsheet, and they sort the spreadsheet, they send it to Claude, and they use Claude, and then they use this, and then they have to upload the Salesforce or HubSpot. And so there's all these point solutions all along the way. And what you end up with is a situation where it's the sales users who are working for the AI. It's they're doing all the busy work and the AI is doing the thought work. And it's backwards. It's what we really want to have is a solution where the AI does all the busy work
Yeah.
and enables the people to do the thing that they're really good at. People are
Yeah.
really good at building relationships. People are
Yes.
really good at building trust. People are really good at selling, and I think that if you really think about, okay, how do you take, you know, I think you see this in the industry today, like the SDR role is being really devalued and people are saying, oh, we're going to automate the SDR. And I think it's really the opposite way. It's the wrong way to think about it. How do you make an SDR that much more valuable? How do you
Yeah.
take the sales development rep and take away a lot of that busy work? If their role is to sort through 1,000 leads, yeah, I can see why you might want to replace that. If their role is to allow AI to sort through 1,000 leads and follow up with the 10 that are really, really hot
Here we go.
immediately, those
Yeah.
are the ones that, rather than doing all that like research, give them the ones and use AI to find the ones, and then they can follow up that much faster. Companies that follow that that follow up within like 24 hours of a lead being logged get that much, like get tons of, it's like 3, 4, 5x more business. I forget the exact stat, but like, the speed with which you follow up with a lead is critical. And if
Oh
you're
yeah,
spending a ton of time researching a bunch of dead leads, then you're not
yeah.
getting in time. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we've all lived it. Like you have a lead, and then time for you to come back because I need to answer to this guy. You take 2 more days and no more answers. It's
Yeah.
really all about that speed. So new product, new vision. How do we make so? And I don't want to be provocative, but it's a very busy space, and this
Okay.
huge space, like you said, Clay, Apollo, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and I don't want to mention all the ZoomInfo and the Privco all the world, where you can now say, okay, what I want to do is to be able to build that view of my lead, as much data as I can, and I'm going to patch all of that. It all ends up in HubSpot or in Salesforce, and I'm supposedly know now everything about that lead and being able to action it. That's what people are building today. They're connecting all those data sources because Clay is good with emails, Apollo is good with descriptions, and so on and so forth. And then in the end, in my one repository, like I said, which could be one of those CRM solutions, I bring in, which become a data integration hub, I'm bringing all those sources. How do you make a difference from that model that seems to be the core model that we see today in a lot of the enterprises?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a problem still to be solved. These are awesome tools. They're well-funded tools. They're like not to take away anything from any one of the tools you just mentioned. They're all amazing systems. I think what I'm seeing in the market today is that if you look at lead generation, lead capture, the actual getting leads is a commodity. You can go to Clay, you can go to Apollo, you can buy 1,000 leads for $50. You can describe your ICP and you're going to get probably more leads than you know what to do with. And I see the same problem with even, soft leads where I've gone over many years to many conferences, gone to Dreamforce, gone to Google Next, gone to Money 2020, gone to all these different like industry conferences. And you have a booth and you stay at the booth and you collect, the badge scans throughout the day and you come back, it's been a week long and you come back on Monday and that whoever organized that conference sends you this big long spreadsheet and it's got
Yeah.
all of your leads and you're like, yes, so many great leads. And then what do you do with them? And I've seen so many times that then becomes, it's some executive's problem because like now you've got like, okay, which are the hot leads? And this is a spreadsheet. And so what you end up with is your most expensive people trying to figure out who to follow up with, who not to follow up with. And then somebody has to build the workflow and the mailing marketing tool that then sends a kind of form email that everyone ignores anyway. And then, so I think what you end up with is a system where companies have more leads than they know what to do with.
Yeah.
And then I think also at the other end of the spectrum, so, I'm describing the gap, right? The other end of the spectrum is companies are really good at opportunity management. HubSpot, Salesforce, products and price books, and, all of these like really, really deeply ingrained tools do a really great job of helping sales organizations, manage active opportunities to a successful closure. And so what I do see as a real gap though, and a growing gap and a growing opportunity in the industry is to get from one spot to the other. You have the leads. How do you make sure that without having your sales team spend all of their time stitching together tools, because
Yeah.
that's what the data tells us too. It's like sales reps are spending less than 40% of their time selling,
Yeah.
which means they're doing a lot of administrative tasks, they're doing a lot of operational tasks, they're learning
Yeah.
new tools, they're stitching together, they're taking Clay and they're downloading the spreadsheet, and then somebody's learning how to use Zapier or NAN, and then and that person leaves the company, and then like that system stops working. And and so you don't have everybody, and even with kind of modern AI vibe coding tools, which are really amazing,
Hmm.
we use them ourselves. everybody loves to build the big flashy thing that they roll out, but nobody loves the maintenance that goes on for the next 2 to 3 years of like, oh,
Yeah,
now
they
we
don't.
have to install the next patch update for some random NPM thing that, and so to really, when we talk about like having a tool that is empowering a sales team,
Mm-hmm.
you want a tool that's really focused on the end user, making their job that much easier and making their job not about how do you stitch together 10 different tools, but just like, hey, I have a new lead. It automatically generated. They've automatically been added to my mailing list. I have them already scored. I have the research is already created. I talked to them the first time. All I had to do was read the research, and I already know something about them that I can go and have a conversation with. And it also routed to me because I knew something that other reps might not have about what product they might be interested in. Because I think we also have a problem in the industry of if you get routed to the wrong sales rep, you have that first conversation and you're like, oh, I'm the wrong guy, but I'll have you talk to the other, and it's like, well, if you had just routed it to the right person, we could have had the right
Yeah.
conversation in the first time. So I think there's all these steps that are, an area that AI can really help with.
So are these the key features that are part of what you're building with UX AI?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So I'll just walk you through the workflow. And the first thing we have is lead capture, and we can capture leads in a number of different ways. Web agents can be deployed to a website. Industry reports show that web agents, conversational web agents, chatbots are 2 to 3 times more effective than form fields. Form fields are a leaky way of getting lead, generation. So the first idea is to say, hey, okay, on a website, you can capture leads through just having somebody asking questions and then also collecting their name, collecting their email, offering them, an offer or a meeting or something like that to entice them to want to share information, have
Mm-hmm.
gated content. There's a million different ways to, entice someone to want to share information with you. We make it a conversational, easy to use chat interface. We also have a Zapier integration. You can upload a spreadsheet. You can take a picture of a business card. If you're at a conference, you can take a picture of a QR code if it's got a LinkedIn, kind of connection to their QR code on their badge. There's a bunch of different ways you can get the lead into the system. We also integrate with Calendly. So if you have a Calendly
Yeah.
integration, and that'll automatically create a lead when you have a new invite. And all of these integrations are just kind of built in. So the lead is in the system. And then
Gotcha.
without having to do anything, the next step is it researches it. And I use the word research because it's more than enrichment. It's more than just getting email and phone. Like you already have the email and the phone because it's a lead that's been generated. What
Mm-hmm.
we're doing is a 4-step enrichment. The first is to say, is this a real, especially if it's a web lead, is it a real lead or is it just junk? The
Yeah.
second is to do an initial research step of that person's employer's company and who they are at that employer. If they are the CEO, you want to know. If they are on the executive team, you want to know. They probably have purchasing authority, and you should be
There
calling
we
that
go.
person as quickly as you possibly can because
Yeah.
they're someone who has agency and ability to buy your product if they want to. And so that's somebody you want to talk to. Or are they an intern researching competitors? Like so you want to know who are they at their company, and you can usually tell that from that website if they're on it, if they're not on it, and who they are, if they are on it. The second step, or the third step rather, is we do a broader search. Once we know a little bit about who you are at a company, we just
Mm-hmm.
do a broad search across the internet. Like, and what we've really found is that many leaders today, many people who are purchasers and, have buying power at a company today, have some appearance. They have a blog or they are on YouTube or they've written something for,
Yeah.
like something they've talked about. Or
Mm-hmm.
at the very least, they're on LinkedIn, obviously, and you can
Yeah.
get their where do they go to school and things like that. And so we get that sort of broader information, which is especially useful when you have that, next conversation or first conversation really with them. So you have something to connect about. And then the last step is we have the ability to target specific sites that that our customer can choose. And so if you're in maybe the tech industry, you might want to look at Substack and LinkedIn. If you're in the medical profession, there's, physician listing websites, things
Yeah.
like this. There's different places that you go depending on industry, depending on what your ICP is. So we really wanted to make the ability to say, okay, there are specific locations to search. And then we use that research. That's the research step. Then we go to a scoring step. And the important part with scoring is really to say it's an AI-based scoring model, but it's not black box. You know, we don't want to
Okay.
just create a system where it scores it and tells you, hey, this is an 8, but I can't tell you why, which I think is a real gap in a lot of AI scoring systems today. It's based on, you know, a linear regression of, you know, past, you know, performance of who knows how many leads and takes that forward, which is useful. But if you can really say, okay, this person scored high in terms of, you know, intent because of the language they were using with the chat bot, and also they clicked on 12 different pages in this particular product on your website, that's really useful information. That means they took the time to research a little bit about what they were asking about. So that is a signal that they're a, you know, a high intent buyer. Other things you'd be looking for are, you know, are they an executive? Are they somebody who has purchasing authority? So it scores based on those things and then tells you this is how we scored because of these reasons.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after the scoring model, we do the routing. And the routing is also an intelligent system where if you have 10 reps,
Yes.
one of them is probably good at some product. One of them is probably more technical. One of them
Yeah.
is like you've got different people with different skill sets, right?
Hmm.
So you want to be able to have people describe what their interests are. What are they good at? And you know, I've seen a lot of systems that try to really do this through like creating a skills database, and you know, you have this like big data model of these are the
Yeah.
skills you can have and these are the skills that, you know, we and I've never seen one actually implemented in a useful way. But what we've really tried to do is use AI and just say, okay, you're a seller. Describe what you're good at. What are you, you know, what are the things that you are, and, you know, include things about where you went to school and things that will match a potential lead so that when a new lead comes in,
Oh,
we're able to say, hey, this is the best seller for this lead. Assuming they have capacity, let's
mhm.
assign them to this lead and then they can take that first pass with it. And then after that, you know, it's nurturing. We're really trying to help people write that first email. The
Okay.
more you can say, okay, all I had to do was click a button, it generated the email, and I can schedule it or just send it. You're reading it, but you know, it's a less of a lift than saying, okay, now I have to think about how do I respond to this person and all of that. It's just, hey, generate it and send it and then have that first conversation. And then after that, you know, the follow up becomes more, you know, the human activity of selling and of building that relationship. And so that's the goal, is to say, okay, there's these 7 steps of capture through, you know, nurturing and engagement of
Hmm.
of a new lead, and bringing that to the point of conversion
Yeah.
to an opportunity. Yeah.
So there is this big debate around the AI SDR, and it seems like you kept the human in the loop. If I hear you well, the system will draft the email based on the research that has been done. It's able to, and I played around with it. So it's able to not only grab research, but also grab from the campaign that you're building a topic and align that email with the topic and the research. And without going into too much details, if you have a look, and I hope you guys will have a look at the platform, you can actually adjust how much you input from your notes, from your Slack, from your over channels. And that's a great thing. But one thing we do see in the industry, and we all seen those great email campaigns, and I will say campaigns all around the city for those new AI SDR that do send emails themselves. And to be honest with you, a lot of people are tired of having to send their own emails. And they're like, oh, if I'm going to send 50 of them or 75 of them, I just want a click of button that knows everything about these guys, make it nice and send it. Why make that choice to keep the human in the loop where it seems that, and I know that you have a stance around eliminating jobs with AI, but isn't it a bit 2025 to to do it with the human touch?
Well, it's a good question. And what I would say is that we do have the ability to send emails en masse. If you have 100 leads, if you have 1,000 leads, you don't have to review them all. You can just click send and it will send 1,000 customized emails for you. And each one of those is based on that research. We really give people the opportunity to review, the opportunity to you know, alter, to edit, to change, to and then send. They don't have to. And so that I think is the real power of saying you have a lead that came in, you have the opportunity to review it, and you have the opportunity to, to send whatever you want, but this is the draft ready for you to send. I think that when I've gotten, I get a lot of cold outreach, over a lot of different careers over the years. The ones I almost always ignore are the well-formatted, beautiful, like, unless it's a newsletter that I'm used to reading and I'm interested in it. If it's cold outreach, the ones I read, it's like maybe 2 sentences, happens to mention that, like, oh, you play guitar, like something random about me that has nothing to do with anything. Those are the ones I'm like, oh yeah, like, and I'll take a call. And
Yeah.
a lot of times it's because that person went above and beyond. They did a little research. They found out something about me. I'm not that hard to find things out about. Like, I'm all over the
Yeah.
internet. So like it's pretty easy to find something that you can, like, bond with me about, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
so the people who do that, and it's usually not the well-formatted email. It's the one that came across the wire, and sometimes it's still clearly AI generated, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I can tell you didn't actually write this, but at the same time, I'm interested in how you got this information. So like, I'll have that conversation anyway. But I think that's the real secret is like, how do you in a cold outreach or even a second email or like just a response
Mm-hmm.
indicate that you've done something, that you've taken the time to learn a little bit about someone and included that in that message.
And this is really interesting because there is this stance, and I think you wrote a bit about it around this era of volume where mass emails and this idea of a spray and pray is kind of coming to an end, and that you believe in that view that with the spread of the spam filters and then the mailboxes becoming more and more intelligent, it's kind of a tug of war between the advertisers and marketers on one side trying to get us messages and the mailboxes on the other side trying to filter them, get them out, and quote unquote preserve our time. How do you see that? What's broken in that system? How do you see this tension evolving with the new tools, with AI, and with in the end, with the proliferation of messages getting to us?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, when you think about marketing, especially sending newsletter type emails, I think it is useful for building a brand and building
Mhm.
the way in which you talk about something and the way in which people think about it. And especially as people get more and more used to your brand and they want to hear from you, then it can be a very useful tool. I think if they haven't heard from you or they don't know who you are, I think that's where you really have the opportunity to do a lot more customization, a lot more personalization to try to make it really, really, make it more interesting for that person to where they are saying, oh, okay, that's interesting and want to look at it. I got an email the other day from a company that was selling video production for small businesses like myself. And it was fascinating because it was a simple video, but they at the very beginning of the video just took a screenshot of my website and
Okay.
superimposed their own, kind of person talking about it over the website. And it was like, it just caught my attention. And I talked to them because I was like, this is interesting. Like, and I was just interested to say, like, are you manually creating each of these videos like one by one by one? Or like, do you have an automated process? Or like, how does this work? Then he had it like automated. He had this whole like workflow of just like, it takes the screenshot and it does a fake scroll. And he has his, and the rest of the video was already made, but it made it feel personal. And
Yeah.
it was a really great way for a video production company to say like
Mhm.
they could, make it personal for you just in a quick email that you might not even read. So I think that all of those types of things are like just you are trying to get past spam filters, but at the same time you're also like even if you get past the spam filter, if you're ignored by the human, then what did it matter anyway? So I think having that initial connection, with a person is kind of the important part of personalizing an email and making it interesting to them and making it worth their time to continue to read and to engage.
That's excellent. One of the things that come often in that debate is the part of the technology itself, the workflow, obviously, how you bring things together, and then the I will say, I want to say the power of the models that are behind. There is this idea and that in your offering, it seems that there is the possibility to bring your own model and to have on-prem deployment. So you also have a stance on the quality of the model, of the data that is being used. How did you position your company as being able to go from one size fits all to I can also do things for you and your very own setup? Is it because you have a focus on some regulated industry like legal firms that like to have their own data, or healthcare firms with privacy and confidentiality, or financial services? What drives this, I will say, this particular attention to the models, the tech, the data?
Yeah, all of those. So, regulated industries, obviously enterprise companies. What we wanted to create was a system that you could use. You can just, buy with a credit card, use easily yourself as an individual seller for a very low fee, as an SMB or a mid-market company for, a broader feature set, but for a little bit more, or as an enterprise to really be able to have a customized, version of the overall stack and of the feature set. And the reason this is possible is we wanted to build something that could be easily deployed. It's initially it's a multi-tenant architecture like a Salesforce or anything else. It can
Mm-hmm.
be deployed. We can deploy it as a single tenant just as easily. We can also deploy it as a single tenant elsewhere. And so that's the real magic of saying, okay, this is something that we could do for a company that wants to host it on their own and get
Yeah.
the same value out of it. And I think I've done this in the past. Actually, it was exactly what we had sold to Salesforce. We were building a repurposable app for iPad-based closed-loop marketing sales that we
I
sold
see.
again and again and again to different companies that had slightly different versions of it. And we also sold it as a standard package on Salesforce's App Exchange, but we
Yes.
had it as an available option that was actually way more popular than the standard app. And that was because
Ah,
companies would see it and say, this is amazing. Can I do this? And we were always able to say, yeah, we can. We'll just quote it and we'll
here
make
we
that
go.
change. And here it is for you. And, it was easy to deploy to iPads because people had iPads. It wasn't running on our systems. It was running on their iPads. And so we had this deployment model that was able to be, repeatable for large enterprises in that way. And we did that for, yeah, banks and far, the first one was for a medical devices company and large enterprises. And so that same model, I think, is even easier today because of AI.
Here we
And
go.
when you're building a product, like one of the kind of core tenets is to say, you really have to limit how custom you get for each individual customer, or else you end up in a situation where you have to update 1,000 different deployments.
Yeah.
But with AI, you're able to really use that, vibe coding, model to be able to make updates across multiple branches for different customers and then be able to deploy it as the
Yeah.
main branch and then also customer A's branch, customer B's branch. It's just part of the model to be able to say, okay, we're going to deploy changes. We'll have AI run the QA on it and we'll have a good system, of replicating that. Obviously, it's a more expensive option, but it gives people that ability to, and I think also it's an area that really there's not a lot of competition. If you ask Salesforce to deploy Salesforce in your environment, the answer is no, right? And so that's an area where I think that we can have an option that companies can, customize, deploy, and use it, within their own stack.
That's really interesting because in your writings, you have these positions around how AI is still, I guess, based on your experience at both Salesforce and OpenAI, how AI is still a conundrum for some CIOs. And now you come with a solution that is heavily AI based, offering them to whether doing themselves or having the ability to have their own version or having the ability to have a more SaaS version. What a CIO to do in this new world? What's the message here for you to the community? We see a lot of people struggling with not just the where to start, but what's the best thing to do with it? You chose CRM and we talked about it. Some of us are choosing customer service. We chose here sales, but there are so many use cases. What's your point of view on how those AI changes are changing, I will say, the thinking of the people that are in charge of those technology systems, and how a company like yours become what, an additional integration? I buy UX and then I plug it into Salesforce, or is it UX plus Apollo plus Clay plus Salesforce? How do you become part of that conversation now?
Yeah, so we want UX to live where the seller is. So I'll start by saying we have a web interface. We also have an MCP integration that you can use from Claude. We have a ChatGPT app that's going through the OpenAI's approval process right now. So we'll have an app in their app store, and also in the Salesforce Agent Exchange. There will be, we're building it and we'll be submitting it soon, a Salesforce app as well. So it's not, when we talk about Salesforce, we want to be a part of that ecosystem. We want to be, because it's a rich, rich
Yeah.
ecosystem that companies are using all across the globe. Same with OpenAI, same with Claude. We want to be a part of these really rich ecosystems of users and of businesses. But I think I think the CIO role is this really interesting role today, and it's an evolving role in that it's traditionally been the area where you're in control of technology and process and not as much on, the sort of the people that are using it. But I think we're seeing this explosion of sales users, of business users, of business executives that are going out and getting tools. This started with Salesforce. I mean, the Salesforce grew without IT in the very beginning, right? It was mostly sales executives went out and bought it, and then IT had to figure out how to incorporate it. And I think we're continuing to see that with AI tools, where executives, and sometimes it's the CEO buys it, and then the CIO has to figure out what to do with it. So I think we have a situation where CIOs are really learning to adapt to new tools as they come along, but also are obviously very, very concerned about proliferation of tools all over the place. They want to have governance. They want to have, a system that, keeps things from a security and a compliance perspective. And it's very important, right? So like we want to empower the CIO, which is why we want to be a part of the Salesforce Agent Exchange community. We want to be a part of these like bigger company, communities that are, deploying apps within enterprises. And so with that, I think there's an opportunity for CIOs to really, be able to bring in, evaluate, work with end users. And I think that's what I have told CIOs that I've talked to is that magic of, focusing on solving individual people's problems has these compounding network effects where you can suddenly have found the thing that's really growing within an organization. And when your CEO says, what are the risks? Like, what is the security? You can say, it's solved, it's something that we've been planning for all along is
Yeah,
a really powerful position for a CIO to be in.
that's really interesting because in the end, with your product, it seems like the way you see things is being able to say, we're taking care of the research, we're taking care of the somehow part of the SDR role. We also taking care of the write up of the email, but you can manage your opportunities and the workflows with which you drive opportunities through your system as you want. It's not something that you want to onboard today in UX AI. Or is it in your roadmap to keep going down the line, like we saw with, like we see with Salesforce? Tomorrow have a pricing tool, and then to put another layer of revenue forecasting, and so on and so forth. You know how deep those things go. How do you see your scope, and how do you see your roadmap?
Great question. I see what we wanted our initial launch to be was a full featured tool that was able to take a company from new lead to new opportunity. So we do have those four basic CRM objects of lead, opportunity, account, we call it company, and contact. So if you have a new lead, you can convert it to an opportunity, account, and a contact. And if you're a small business or you're just an individual seller, that might be enough for you.
Yeah,
You can work through the dollar amounts on your opportunity and move it from the stage to stage and talk to your team and use CRUD to say, This is, how many opportunities I have open, and that might be enough for you. That's what we wanted to create, a full system that wasn't just a point solution. That said, we very well know that enterprises are not looking to replace their entire CRM. They're looking to fix certain problems. So that's the goal of saying, okay, we'll integrate with Salesforce. We'll have a Salesforce app that you can install, have the UX display on your opportunity, but say, okay, we worked the lead for you. The opportunity shows up in Salesforce. Now it's assigned to an AE that can take it forward. Make
Here we
that
go.
as simple and easy as possible, and then you're just integrating with that overall system. You're not trying to compete with it. You're just a part of that system. So that's the goal, is to really say, okay, the lead generation is taken care of, and people are working with that. And then once it's an opportunity, great, take it forward. Because I think that's where even within Salesforce, like lead generation, lead engagement was pretty nascent. Opportunity working was very, very advanced, and obviously price books, products, price books, and all of that. So those are areas that I don't see us trying to compete in. No. What I do see us trying to do is probably more in depth. Like, so I think here are some example areas that I think would be, next steps for us. Be able to take a company, take the research and say, I'm looking for electrical engineers who work for this company, that really be able to broaden your scope within a company. Because that's one area, like as a seller, you might
Mm-hmm.
have a contact within a company and
Yes.
you're kind of beholden to that one person. But
Yeah.
if you're able to say, okay, well, like, who is this person's boss? Who are they working with in these other departments? Who are they, like, who are the other buyers that I could be talking to? Or, and try to create those other connections. You have a really powerful ability to do that at a company by company basis. So to be able to start to then, targeting different roles within a company for different, ways of engaging. But then I think also, like you said, we want to get really probably more ingrained into some specific vertical industry use cases to really probably try to solve for, lawyers' problems, or try to solve for
Yeah.
specific problems that you might see in wealth management, or you might see within, capital markets, or you might see within, some of these like more specific areas, to be able to solve. Because I think that's an area too where you can say, if you take an opinionated view on a particular challenge and don't try to solve everything, but just say, hey, we can
Yeah.
solve this one thing for you, I think that really opens up people who aren't trying to. And I've talked over the years, in professional services, one of the challenges you have is your offering is really people to solve your problem, and then a company you might work with is looking for you to help solve their problem. So they're looking for your, initial, just like, how do I solve this? And so, one of the first things you have to do in professional services is to say, like, I have a million different ways I could solve this. I need to learn more about you first. But as a product, you could say, like, hey, we have a solution, that might work and might not, but this is our solution. And so that's an area in which I think we'll look at a few different industry use cases like that to, take to next steps. Right now, integrations are our main focus.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. And one thing we're getting at the top of the hour, but there was one thing I really wanted to have your opinion about. We're seeing models getting more and more powerful. What does that mean for a company like yours? Well, we are starting to see models being able to produce documents, to have a conversation, to do so much more than what we saw 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's so people believe that in a year, in 2 years, their capabilities are going to be even larger to what we see today. How do you kind of try to calibrate your future and the offering that you're going to be able to bring to market and those growing capabilities from the GPTs and the clouds out there? Is there a way for a founder today to say, I know that they're going to be able to solve for that. So in my roadmap from a year from now, these are the kind of things that we want to be able to do for financial advisors, like you say, or for lawyers.
Yeah, amazing question. I think the thing that we try to keep in mind is the models today are the worst they will ever be going forward, right? They are going to keep getting better and better and better. And so if we have initial functionality that's working well today, a year from now, the power of that, it's going to be cheaper and better by ways we can barely even imagine. If you look a year ago, think about image generation 2 years ago, you could barely get anything. You had that kind of garbled text and everything. And now you could generate these really, really in-depth images that are amazing what you can put together. And video is getting, is sort of the same way. It's getting more and more believable, which is a little scary. But at the same time, like what are the things that we can bring in from a multimodal perspective as well to help, make it that much more personalized, an initial outreach or something like that. So I think that, every technological wave has this hype cycle, right? And you
Yeah.
have this initial, like, people are excited about it. And then there's that trough of disillusionment, right? And I think the trough of disillusionment is actually where the opportunity lies. That is where
Oh,
people start developing the ideas that then use that hype. What was hype is now starting to become reality.
yeah.
And that's where the business really starts to grow. And I really feel like that's where we are right now. We had the initial hype. People got kind of annoyed by like, oh, it doesn't do what I thought it would. And now people are building, and I think that over the next year, over the next couple of years, we're going to really see some amazing technologies launch that are just going to keep taking it forward and keep taking it forward. And I think, the ChatGPTs and the Claudes of the world, they're building these models that are going to create so much more fertile ground to build new things. And, that's what we want to be a part of.
Excellent. No, Tom, thank you. Thanks for that. I like to finish with offering you a shameless plug. What are you looking for? Investors, clients, partners, distribution? What can we help you with a bit of reach to get your hands on?
Thank you so much. Yes, all of these, we are actively seeking investors. If you're an investor and you'd like to talk, give me a call. I would love to talk. We are actively seeking new customers. Go to UX, ask the chatbot for 50% discount. It'll give you a 50% discount and you can sign up for a free trial as well. Or ask the chatbot for a meeting with me and it'll schedule a meeting with me. And so, that's the magic of UX.ai is we have a chatbot that'll do a lot of things and it's easy to deploy, 5-minute deployment to a website as well. So yeah, it's youex.ai. My name's Tom Gersic. Super appreciate this time, Melvin.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the app and what you're doing. Like I said, I tried it and it's really impressive. So you guys gonna give it a try. And looking forward to continue this conversation. Thanks, Tom.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melvin. Have a good day.
Thank you.